How's it going, guys? I'm Connor from Running Warehouse, and today we are here with Melanie and Fabian. They are two key players in helping with the development and athlete testing of a very important racing shoe, the Adidas Adios Pro 2. Now, Fabian, Melanie, there's a lot I want to talk about today, and I know the athletes are asking more and more about these next generation shoes. Can you first kind of start us off and tell us, is this a time in history, probably more now than ever, that athletes are asking about innovation, performance, and how they can perform the best on race day?
I think the sport itself, sport of running, has been, increasingly been more competitive and elevating since years, right? Back in the days when you look at shoes versus the shoes that we have now, center tracks versus professional tracks that we see nowadays. So technological advancements in the sport of running is nothing new. I think what we do see is that the sport itself becomes more and more professional, and that's like a 360-degree view. It's nutrition, it's mindset, it's training, it's recovery, and the product is part of it.
Yeah, and jumping off of that, I can also say, so from testing in-house, we did a lot of athlete testing in-house. And every time we had this with the Adios Pro, the athletes didn't want to give it back anymore. They just wanted to hang on to it and run it. And we have the same thing now with the Avanti. All the athletes we had tested in-house, they didn't want to give it back. They just wanted to keep running in it, keep racing in it. And that kind of shows that of their excitement for these products as well.
That's extremely exciting to hear. And as an athlete myself, I know how important it is when you get a shoe that just feels right and you don't want to give it back because you feel like you have an advantage on race day. Now, kind of moving on forward into some of those advantages and performance benefits, let's talk about the innovation. How important is it to have the most innovative compounds and the latest and greatest technology, and how is that going to impact not only current shoes, but shoes moving into the future?
The whole Adios collection right now, we're launching it with the energy rod. So for example, now the Avanti spike that we have is going to be the first track spike that has the energy rod material. And what we also saw previously with the Boston, now the Boston is the training version with these energy rod construction. As well for the Adios Pro 2, so this is an evolution from the original Adios Pro. So we're always looking to innovate, especially for our predecessor, and always looking to really bring the best for the athlete with the innovations we have on the market.
Well, specifically moving into the Adios Pro 2, can you tell us a little bit more about what athletes were asking for? I know with version 1, it was a huge upgrade. Can you tell us a little bit about what people, specifically your elite athletes, enjoyed in that first version, and then how it's been elevated in version 2?
One of the big topics was also that transition from what was probably more of a running flat, a couple of years ago, into what you now have on the market. I think one of the key moments were when we were traveling to Kenya and Ethiopia and really testing with the guys on the ground in very, very early stages and prototypes, and just really getting this feedback while they are training in their natural habitat, when they do like the tough work, basically. One of the things that we are always seeing that they're asking for is more of the strength. And obviously you talk about propulsion, you talk about grip, you talk about lightweight, you talk about the least amount of energy loss. So these things are always coming up, and this is where we tune and where we tweak, and basically creating that next version, the next generation of the product.
So the Adios Pro 2, the one that we were really focusing on was this lightweight concept. And so this, like you could tell when the athletes, when they get the shoes in their hands, they kind of do a little field test, which one's lighter and which one would they prefer. And so that is kind of what was our focus now, moving from the Adios Pro to the Adios Pro 2. And that's why we see more or less the optimized construction for the lightweight, with the scoped out midsole, and the upper also kind of all of the zero distractions, unnecessary points are all sculpted out for a lighter weight shoe.
Perfect. Now, let's move a little bit deeper into the testing process. You talked a little bit about Kenya. Can you tell us a little bit more about what goes into this entire testing process, and what athletes were looking for, and how you go about quantifying performance benefits?
So with the Adios Pro 2, it's one of the many shoes that we had a bunch of prototypes with, and especially like with the Avanti, we had a bunch of different versions with countless prototypes. And so the first thing we do is normally mechanical testing. So this is a standardized testing that we kind of start to see what are the benefits and how will it relate to running performance. And then from that, the whole world was restricted with the COVID pandemic, so it wasn't the easiest situation, but we actually managed to have a testing event last summer, end of the summer, where we had a bunch of elite athletes in-house and we're able to test them in the lab. So this was biomechanical testing, physiological testing, and as well as with the Avanti, we also were able to do a lot of biomechanics testing with athletes, even with the ongoing restrictions around the world.
And I think this is also where we had to be a little bit more agile and create new ways of testing. It was great that we were able to have athletes there, and the data helps a lot. It helps you to quantify, validate, also find the little tweaks here and there, and when we change something at the product, how do athletes react to it? What we also ask is obviously the perception, the subjective feedback from the athlete, something that you cannot underestimate. You can measure a lot, but also that feeling. And you mentioned it there, Connor, where you said, hey, I know how important it is to have a shoe on the foot that feels right? This feeling is something that we try to quantify, but also where we ask the right questions. And then in the later process, when we kind of start tuning only little details, that's when we send out, prototypes to Kenya, to Ethiopia, to the US. We had a couple of athletes running in them, giving us feedback. We jump on video calls and really get their feedback in real time, make changes again, and up to that point where we're happy with the finished product.
One more thing to add to that, and that's exactly why we work with these athletes, because they really pick up on all these nitty-gritty details, and that's kind of what I was saying with removing all unnecessary parts of the upper. They pick up on, oh, that's not necessary, like, can we get rid of that? There's all these nitty-gritty details that your average consumer might not necessarily be able to point out.
Well, can you tell us a little bit more about the prototyping phase? You talk about the athletes trying things and noticing small differences. Can you tell us how many prototypes actually go into this entire testing process? And as you're going through the phases, are you noticing most of the athletes are saying the same things, or are you also seeing that some athletes are preferring certain setups over other athletes?
In terms of prototype numbers, I honestly couldn't give you a number. It's countless prototypes, but we're also always looking to evolve from the previous. So we used, for example, for the Adios Pro 2, we used the findings that we had from the Adios Pro, and kind of as soon as the development for that one finishes, we're already on to the next, looking, okay, what other changes can we make and how can we involve it further? And for the Avanti, here once again, countless prototypes. We had, the whole lab was full of shoes. I couldn't even tell you how many it was, but we're really looking for all these little tiny changes that could have a performance benefit, or we're looking to how to optimize the shoe for really the different people who are going to be running in them.
Yeah, that's probably an easy answer. Yes, everybody, every human being is a little bit different, feels a little bit different. I think this is also where we try to find a best way to help every athlete to achieve their goals on any level, basically, right? It might be you trying to break your own barrier, run the fastest marathon that you've ever done, versus a pro working on this 2-hour barrier, basically, right? So I think what we've learned a lot is where we see differences and how we can overcome them and make sure that, maybe even a 4-foot runner, a product works for a 4-foot runner versus a midfoot striker, for example, and things like this. These are the little things. Specifically on the Avanti, when it comes to track is a little bit more standardized, which helps obviously because it's always the same. It's more or less the track, the surface is kind of the same. We worked specifically with athletes in the US, with Eric Avila, for example. We had Jeremy Webb helping us on these things, even though he's a little bit of a short distance runner, where we really want to understand, okay, what are the limitations of these spikes? What are they feeling, again? And what can we also measure when it comes to split times, for example?
Now, when we talk about the Avanti in particular, can you tell us a little bit more about the testing process? Because when we look at shoes like past Avantis, past track spikes, it really has been a very standard layout for years. And now with the Avanti kind of getting it a complete overhaul and this complete next generation look and feel, I know there's probably some different things that you guys have tested now more than ever. Can you tell us a little bit about what made the testing for the Avanti different than past years of testing track spikes?
Kind of what you were mentioning, because it's such a different shoe, which also brings us back to there were so many different prototypes that we tested. So this is just like I mentioned, one after the other, all these little details, seeing how they combine, seeing how they perform, both mechanically and biomechanically, and kind of start to get a direction that we're going for the final prototype that we then had.
It's something that we've done for many, many years, right? Our founder, Adidas, has been always working with pro athletes on the ground. So bringing athletes to the lab, where we actually have a full setup of a track, force plates, motion capturing, and where we really want to understand, okay, if you do change, for example, the stiffness of the rod, or if you do change the material of the midsole, how does the runner react, and how do different types of runners react to it, right? Then you find that compromise. And one thing you mentioned is, yes, it's a different setup of the spike, specifically the forefoot geometry. What we've learned from marathon running, we basically took this and put everything into a track spike now, that you have the advantages, the lowest amount of energy loss, while giving you still this guided feel of the energy rods through the full race. And specifically on the 5 and 10K, you need that endurance. And so far, we have seen a really nice transition of most of our pro athletes into the shoe.
Perfect. Well, with shoes like the Adios, the Boston, the Avanti, I think we're seeing huge upgrades. And as you mentioned, athletes do not want to give them back. Can you tell us a little bit more about how confident athletes were with this end product and what they're looking forward to kind of moving into the future?
Looking at specific athletes like Perez Chepchirchir, and enabling them to run at the highest level that they can, they're always looking for this, edge, this competitive edge, right? When they train, what they eat, when they recover, when they get physio, for example, and things like this. Having the best product on the feet, which allows them to get the best confidence, because this is also part of running, right? I think this is something, going to the start line, not worrying about the product because you're safe. This is something what we learned from them in many, many different product developments. We sometimes refer to them as our Formula One race car drivers. They feel every little detail, right? If you change the rubber compound on a Formula One race car and maybe the humidity changes or the temperature or the surface of the track changes, they will tell you right away. And it's the same with some of these pro athletes. They can tell you these small changes really fast, and we try to measure them as well. So we're using more sensors also on the ground in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in the US, in Asia. So also making sure that we have all the runners covered. I think what every runner looks for, your runner yourself, we are running constantly, is this great feeling of a run, getting a great workout in, but also breaking your own barriers, right? Being fast, feeling fast. And this is something that might be a little bit different versus the spectrum of the athletes. But at the same time, it's always about traction, it's about weight, it's about breathability, it's about cushioning, it's about energy loss, it's about propulsion. So these topics come up again. And what we're trying to do, specifically from the Adios 1 to the Adios Pro 2, is where we just sculpt and tune. We basically take it as an evolution, but with taking it to the track is basically a revolution, right? We tried out a couple of things in the past with boost on track, also regarding energy loss, and now you have a state-of-the-art spike with kick-ass technology and energy rods where you can get the best out of your run.
Maybe if I can jump on and give a cool story. So as I mentioned, we had a bunch of the elite athletes in-house to do a testing event back at the end of last summer. And here, one of the shoes that we were testing was the Adios Pro 2. And there's actually a cool story where after the athlete was testing in our shoes, they sat down with their coach and really started planning for the next PR. And it's that kind of like motivation and confidence that we're bringing with these shoes. And I couldn't help but be proud to be a part of the team able to do that for such inspiring athletes.
Well, Melanie, Fabian, it's so exciting to hear how much goes into the athlete testing process and how excited the athletes are to get these shoes on their feet. It really is a revolution in the track spike in the racing world, and we're seeing athletes now ask more than really ever what they can do to have an advantage on race day. So it's exciting to see Adidas taking a charge and really listening to the athlete to give them the best possible product. Now, I'm very excited to get these shoes on my feet, and I know the consumers out there are also going to be excited. If you're looking to get any of the new Adizero collection shoes on your feet, they're available now here at Running Warehouse.